All right, let's talk about the cloud. It's a term we hear all the time, right? But what is it actually? Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain. We're going to deconstruct this huge concept by digging into the architecture of one of the biggest players out there, Microsoft Azure. It's so easy to picture the cloud as, well, a cloud, something kind of abstract and invisible, just floating out there in cyberspace. But the reality? It's the complete opposite. The cloud is incredibly real, it's physical, and it has this massive global structure built on a network of enormous data centers, literally all over the planet. So how do we wrap our heads around something that big? Let's try an analogy. For the next few minutes, I want you to think of us as architects and city planners. We're not just learning about Azure. We're going to build a massive, planet-spanning digital city from the ground up. Okay, so every city needs a place on the map, right? In the Azure world, the absolute highest level, the first pin we put on the globe, is called a geography. Think of a geography as a continent, or maybe a single large country on our big world map. And its main job, its most critical role, is to create a digital border. It's all about making sure your data stays where it's legally supposed to stay. A fantastic example of this is Azure China. Because of local laws, it's a completely separate, physically isolated version of Azure run by a local partner. That's a geography in action. It's a hard boundary that keeps Chinese data inside China. All right, so let's zoom in a bit from that continent-level view. Now we start to see the major metropolitan areas, the big cities. In Azure, these are called regions, and a region isn't just one building, not even close. It's a whole cluster of massive data centers, all physically located pretty close to each other, all working in concert to provide some serious power and stability. Now here's where things get really clever. To build in resilience, Azure pairs up its regions. They create these sister city relationships. So you've got North Europe and West Europe, for example, in the same geography. They're linked. If some huge disaster, I don't know, a massive flood, takes out one city, the other is sitting there, ready to take over the load instantly. Microsoft is so smart about this, they even use it for their own updates. They'll roll out a big update to just one of the pair, make sure everything is perfect, and only then update its sister city. It's a brilliant safety net. Okay, let's zoom in even further. Let's go down to the street level of just one of these digital cities, a single region. We're going to see how it's engineered to basically never go dark. And trust me, this is where the design gets incredibly impressive. The secret sauce, the key to all this uptime, is a concept called availability zones. So stick with our city analogy. Think of these as totally independent districts or neighborhoods. Each one has its own separate power grid, its own water supply, its own internet connection. Everything is completely isolated from the others. So what does that mean for you? Well, it means that if you build your application to run across, say, 2 or 3 of these zones, you've just built yourself an amazing layer of protection. If a construction crew accidentally cuts the main power line to one zone, poof, it goes dark. Your application doesn't even blink. The other zones are completely unaffected and just keep on running like nothing ever happened. And the result of all this engineering? It's pretty amazing. When you use availability zones, Microsoft gives you a contractual guarantee, an SLA, of 99.99% uptime. Now, 4 nines might sound like just a number, but let's put that in perspective. That's less than 53 minutes of downtime for the entire year. That's pretty much the gold standard for reliability. All right, we've got our global map, we've got our super resilient power grids, the physical foundation of our city is solid. But now, how do we actually organize everything we're about to build in it? We can't just have chaos, we need a planning office, some rules. First up, we have what are called resource groups, and these are a perfect fit for our analogy. They're basically the districts of our city. You could have a financial district resource group that holds all your accounting apps, or maybe a marketing district for your public websites. It's just a logical folder, a way to group all the buildings and services for one specific project so you can manage them all together. So if resource groups are the districts, what's the whole city? That's the subscription. It sits one level higher. The subscription is like the city charter. It sets the overall budget, it defines the laws, who's allowed to build what, and it's the main container for all your billing. All your little districts, all your resource groups, they all have to live inside the city defined by that one subscription charter. So who's the one enforcing all these rules and actually doing the construction? That would be the Azure Resource Manager, or ARM for short. This is our city planning office. And it works with blueprints. You give it a detailed blueprint, in this world it's a file called an ARM template, and it goes and builds everything exactly to your specifications. Every building, every road, every time. It's the engine that drives all the automation and makes sure everything is consistent.
Okay, this is the fun part. The foundation is poured, the city is all planned out. So, what can we actually build in our digital city? What do the buildings look like? This is the world of compute.
And Azure gives you a bunch of different building types, each one perfect for a different job. You can get anything from a totally custom-built skyscraper where you design every floor, all the way to a prefabricated, move-in-ready office space.
First, you've got the virtual machine, or VM. This is your custom-built house. You want total control, this is it. You choose the operating system, you install whatever software you want, you configure the networking, literally everything, from the foundation up to the color of the paint on the walls is your decision.
Then you have app services. These are way more like living in a managed apartment building. You don't worry about the plumbing, right? Or the electricity or fixing a leaky roof. The landlord, that's Azure, takes care of all of that underlying stuff. All you have to do is bring your stuff, your code, move it in, and boom, your web app is up and running. And finally, we have containers. This is where our city gets really modern and efficient. Think of these as the standardized shipping containers and the massive automated ports that manage them. A container is a little box that has your application and everything it needs to run all packaged up inside. Azure gives you two main ways to handle them. You've got Azure Container Instances, or ACI, which is like a simple crane for quickly lifting and running one container. And then you have Azure Kubernetes Service, AKS, which is like the entire Port Authority, a massive system for managing and orchestrating thousands of these containers all working together in perfect harmony. Of course, every city, no matter how digital, needs storage. It needs warehouses. You need places to put stuff you use all the time, and you need archives for things you barely ever touch. Azure's main warehouse system is called Blob storage. It's perfect for unstructured stuff. You know, huge files like videos, images, documents. And it's really smart about saving you money. You've got the hot tier, which is like your easy access warehouse right downtown for things you need constantly. It costs a bit more to rent the space, but it's super cheap and fast to grab things. Then, at the other end, you have the archive tier. This is like a dusty warehouse way out in the desert. It's incredibly cheap to store things there, but if you need to get something back, it's going to take longer and cost you more. You just pick the right warehouse for how often you need your stuff. But it's not just about warehousing bulk goods. A truly great city needs libraries. It needs sophisticated places to organize, index, and instantly retrieve its most valuable asset, its data. Now, before we step into this digital library, we need to know that data really comes in two main flavors. First, you have structured data. Think of a perfectly organized spreadsheet. Everything is in neat rows and columns. It's predictable. Then you have unstructured data. And this is all the messy, chaotic, but often more interesting stuff. Emails, documents, photos, social media posts, you name it. And of course, Azure has a specialized wing in its library for every type of information. For that perfectly structured spreadsheet-like data, you've got powerful databases like Azure SQL. But for all that messy, unstructured stuff that needs to work at a massive global scale, you have incredible tools like Cosmos DB. It's not just a library for books, it's a library that can catalog, index, and instantly find anything. A video clip, a customer email, a sensor reading, from any of its branches all over the planet in milliseconds. So there you have it. We've gone on a whirlwind tour of our entire digital city. We started with a global map, we looked at the unstoppable power grids, we saw how the city planning office works, and we explored all the different kinds of buildings and libraries you can create. The whole framework, all the tools, they're right there at your fingertips. So the only real question left is, what amazing digital city are you going to build?